Hello and welcome to She Does Tech, where we tell the career stories of women in tech. I'm Sarah Kinsey, I'm your host for today, and I'm a marketing leader for B2B SaaS startups. And I'm here today speaking with Krystle Olson, who started her career in research and moved into talent acquisition and now in HR. And I know she's had a pretty cool career path that had some surprising twists and turns. And Krystle, I'm really excited to interview you today. Welcome.
Oh, thank you so much, Sarah. It's so lovely to be here and to see you again.
You too. For the audience, Krystle and I met a few years ago when we were working on content for a conference, and I just really loved Krystle. And so as soon as we started this project, She Does Tech, I knew I really want to talk to Krystle. So I'm very excited to see you again.
Thank you. Likewise.
All right, so let's jump into this. To start with, give me just the kind of summary of you and your professional career. Tell me maybe a bit about the job that you're in today. And if you feel like it, tell maybe a high-level version of the story of how you even got there.
Okay, yes, it is a very winding path. So as of last week, I was just promoted into my new role. So I am currently the Vice President of Human Resources at FreshBooks. Very,
Congratulations!
thank
Woo!
you. It's very new and it's very exciting and also very humbling. So I'm just incredibly grateful to the team for trusting me with this. Yeah, so basically I am in tech, but I didn't intend to be in tech. And I think that that might be
Okay.
a path that a number of people sort of find themselves in.
Yeah.
But I'm really grateful that I'm in the position that I'm in right now because there's so much to learn and explore within the HR space in general. And one of the things that I love about it so much is that it's all about systems and people, but especially around systems. And so that's sort of been something that's followed me throughout my career. I definitely didn't intend to be in tech, as I mentioned. I originally thought I was destined to become a cardiologist or a veterinarian.
Oh, wow.
Changed path from that when I got into my first year of biology and then realized, oh, wait a minute, I actually really like plants. And so I went into classical botany and I started studying plant pollinator interactions. And then from there, thought, okay, academia is it. That's where I'm going.
Mhm.
And so I continued on that path, went into a master's degree and studied evolutionary theory and spent a whole lot of time learning all sorts of things about fern chromosomes, which is also very interesting,
Oh,
also
wow.
sometimes not super applicable outside of
Yeah.
academia. But yeah, I was always fascinated with how different systems interact with one another and how one thing happens over here and then it has different impacts that you can't necessarily predict. And so, and just being really focused on research and also on teaching people were two elements that I was really passionate about. But I realized after a little while that academia wasn't where I wanted to go and or stay. And so I had that moment of like, okay, what do I do now? And I was really fortunate because my partner and I decided that we wanted to start a family. And so I said, okay, well, if I'm going down this path, perhaps I go to retail and work in a baby store
Uh-huh.
because I also just wanted a bit of a break from just the myopic view of academia for a bit.
Yeah.
Fortunate enough to have our child, and then I was able to spend the first 4 years of their life with them, which is definitely a privilege and something that I will never ever not be grateful for.
Yeah.
Um, but then they went to school, and then the question came up again of like, what now? And so that's where I was so fortunate to be able to have a door opened to me that led me into tech. And so this was my first foray into HR and the talent and people space, which was Shopify was building their first ever recruiting research team. And it's also referred to as a sourcing team. And so I was able to meet with a number of folks and go through the interview process and recognize that there's the potential of taking my research background and applying it not to the traditional context, but rather to try and understand people and understand what their motivators are and really look for folks who have that highly specialized skill set that you need for some of these really important niche roles. And so that was my first step in the path to being a part of a talent team, an HR team. And then I just moved through there, being exposed to just tons and tons of amazing people, being exposed to a lot of different opportunities and being afforded a lot of trust and autonomy from leaders that I had all along the way. And I'm super happy
Wow.
to tell you more, but that's the
Oh,
short form.
that is, there's so many questions that I would love to ask you from that. So one follow-up question that I usually ask when people walk me through what their career path was, which I already know the answer to here from what you said, is, okay, so did you take a typical journey, a typical career path, or atypical? Clearly atypical. I wonder, I'd love to hear just a little bit about that that door that opened for you into tech. How did
Mhm.
that happen? Was it a relationship? Was it luck? Was it a bunch of work on your part to find a job? I'm imagining that a person who could be listening to this later could wonder, okay, that's great you had a door open, but how could I make that happen for me? So could you
Mhm.
tell a little bit about how that door opened for you or how you found the door?
Yeah, so I again am incredibly privileged in that I knew a number of different people who were working at Shopify at the time, and so including my partner, and so I had had exposure to some folks through that relationship,
Mhm,
and so it was having been exposed to some of the folks there that they happened to know of me.
mhm,
And so then when I heard that this team was being built, I thought, oh, interesting. And so then moved into the interview process. And then from there, it was really all on me to really show that I don't have experience in HR. I don't have experience with the people space. I don't have experience with talent, but I do have experience understanding, again, how systems work, understanding how to apply research principles, experimentation principles, and built a case for the team taking a chance on me. And I'm really grateful that they did. And so it was really about trying to see, like, even though I don't necessarily have all the credentials that one might look for, all of the certifications, those sorts of things, being able to take a look at what I did have and then apply it to this different context in a way that was convincing.
great. So let's take a little bit of a pivot from here and talk about, you mentioned some of the skills that you had already that helped you make the pivot into tech. Um, could you spend a minute or so talking again about those? You said systems, you said, systems, research systems, things like that. I like to think about how a person can look at a job posting with a job title they've never done before, but identify, but if I have this interest or this skill set, it's something that I could apply and maybe make the case for myself. So maybe, you already answered it a little bit, but would you spend a little bit of time talking about for talent acquisition, for sourcing, for HR, what are
Mhm.
some of the those skills, those areas of interest that you would suggest people look internally and see if that might be something they would have?
Yeah, I think the first thing is understanding or having just an appreciation for curiosity in yourself.
Mhm.
And so recognizing that if you are a curious person, that something is going to be directly applicable to really any role that you can possibly look into. Um, that might not necessarily be one of the credentials that's listed on a job posting, but I think that if you are able to weave your inherent curiosity into the way that you're describing yourself, um, even if that's not something that's been listed in the job posting, that's something that's going to really pique people's interest. So that's the first thing.
Yeah.
Another thing that I think, especially coming from a research background, is you have to understand how to see the forest through the trees. And so
Mhm.
you could within academia, you could research until your head fell off, basically. And you have to realize, like, at what point do I know enough information to be able to make the right decision and then to move forward? And so having that ability to collect as much data as you need to be able to develop a strong case, to present that case, and then move forward with that information, I think that's incredibly transferable. And so you might see data acquisition be something that would be a requirement on a job posting. Perhaps you don't necessarily have the experience in the specific domain, but if you have library science as an example, say you've done a lot of work cataloging and understanding these sorts of like architectural systems,
Mhm.
knowledge architectural systems, you can bring that to the role that you're looking for. So
Yeah.
that's one thing. And then I think also um, just having a general understanding of um, how to manipulate data with, and this is like a shout out to everybody, like please just learn basic Excel or basic like Google Sheets. There's so many resources, but that's something that's going to give you a leg up, because then you can start talking about your ability to understand qualitative data, but then also you can bring the quantitative data side to it as well.
Yeah. Um, that last tip or point is something that I laugh a little bit about, but I resonate with so deeply because, for anybody who's maybe listened to all of these different She Does Tech conversations, you will have already heard me say this once, but I'll say it again here. When I graduated from university and started figuring out what I wanted to do for my career path, part of the reason that I chose marketing was because I did not want to be stuck behind a desk all day looking at spreadsheets. I was sure that was the truth. As soon as I ended up in a marketing tech marketing role, where a huge amount of the job was looking at data and understanding how the programs were working, and there's so much amazing data in tech marketing. It's part of what I love. I
Mhm.
I was so wrong. What I love actually is being behind my desk with a spreadsheet in front of me, looking for these insights and figuring out what to do with it. And so one, you can be surprised about I need to turn that off. Double thumbs up. One, I think it's interesting too. You might have these ideas about what you don't love, but until you do it, you might not know. But two,
Mhm.
I would so agree with you. Just basic data manipulation, analytical skills within spreadsheets. Just everybody in every role should have that one.
Mhm. Well, and
Yeah.
then I think the final piece too is, like, especially if you're, so I'm just speaking from like a research academic background, but we've all had to write papers. We've all had to present our work to committees or to your supervisor or to whomever. And so being able to craft really compelling narratives from the data that you have been collecting, that's
Yeah.
also an incredibly transferable skill to the work within a talent acquisition team. Because one of the things that we do, or even just the HR space in general, is we really try to understand what's happening on the people side and then translate that into, and how does this actually like help us drive the business outcomes that we're looking for. And
Yeah.
so that's also a really important piece.
Awesome. All right, I'm gonna move us to another area right now. Um, do you love your career? Do you love what you do? Is it a career that you would recommend that people think, yeah, maybe I want to go that direction?
Yes. Also, I have a 21-year-old cat who's going to join us in just a moment.
That
So,
sounds great. I've
well,
got kids and cats who have been saying, "Go, please come in, cat."
she's going to show up. There she is. So I definitely do. And it's not something, I wasn't sure if I loved it for a while, but I think the thing that I really truly love about it is, one, I am learning constantly and being stretched constantly, which is sometimes very scary and also so invigorating.
Yeah.
Um, Also, there's so much that you can try to understand and predict and build for, but you're working with people, and people are beautiful and complicated and messy. And so um there's just a lot of like creativity that's required, and then a lot of thinking about, okay, how do, like, this didn't necessarily work, how do we make this better, because there are just a lot of those unknowns. And so I really love that about the work. And then I think that there's a real opportunity to, in especially the HR talent people space, to collaborate with so many different parts of an organization and of a business, and really see how you can help create real true impact across the business from all these different parts. And so that's something that I really love about it too.
That's great. So it sounds like it is a path that you would recommend to people earlier in their careers who are thinking about what they want to do throughout
Mhm.
the rest of their career. It sounds like it is something that you would say, yeah, this is a good one. If you think that you're interested in systems, research, people, tech, getting
Mhm.
into a career in tech, in talent acquisition and HR is one that you feel confident saying, yeah, this is a good one.
I would. And the other thing that I think is so important is, some folks can really think about this as like, you move into tech, this is where you, or you move into HR in tech, this is where you stay forever. And I can say so confidently that I've seen so many people move into so many different
Mm,
areas from the starting point of being in the HR talent people space, because you're exposed to so many different parts of
yeah,
the business. And so I've seen members of my team move into becoming data scientists. I've seen people move into becoming UX researchers. I've seen folks move into different parts of the HR space because there's such a diversity of work there. And so I think that that's another thing that's really exciting about the space is you just have so many different opportunities to move into other parts of the business.
Yeah.
And yeah, I find that really exciting too.
Awesome. We're actually almost out of time here. So the last question that I'll ask is, do you have any advice for people who are interested in beginning a career path like yours? Maybe you could take it with people who are just at the very beginning of their career. What advice would you give them of where to start, what to look for? And what about people who are looking to make a pivot?
Yeah, so people who are at the very beginning of their careers, definitely just pay attention to all all of the different ways that you could enter into HR because there's such a diversity of roles there. So there's different recruitment coordinator roles that are sometimes a little bit easier to get into if you don't necessarily have a ton of experience in the HR space. So that's a really lovely way to come into a team and learn more. There are some roles that are maybe a little bit more generalist roles that can also just give you so much exposure to different parts of HR. And so I would recommend that folks just keep an eye on what's being posted. Like this is not going to be rocket science, but really like take a look at what's being posted. Also, there's a lot of opportunities for volunteering in HR spaces with
Oh, interesting.
nonprofits or some other groups that they may just need a helping hand. And so that's a really great way to get a little bit of experience if you don't have a ton on like in your back pocket. And then for folks who are looking to make a career pivot, I think a really important reflection for yourself is just to ask like, what is it that really gets me energized about maybe the previous work that I did that I might want to translate into something else? And if part of the answer that you come back from that question is, I really love working with people, then it really does come down to, okay, who do I know who is in a role that might be able to open a door for me? How do I maintain those connections with folks that might be able to open doors for me? If I was in a role that wasn't in tech, but maybe is aligned with tech, maybe there's somebody that I can reach out to there. I don't think that you can downplay the importance of maintaining a really strong network and building a really strong network in any of this.
Yeah, I agree. Network building, I think, could be a whole conversation separately of how to do that at different stages in your career and different roles that you're in. Oh, I won't open that can of worms here today right now, but that's an interesting one that maybe we should come back to sometime.
Sure.
Well, Krystle, thank you so much for your time today. This has been fun for me to reconnect with you and to learn some things about your career path that I didn't know before. So thank you for sharing and thank you for being here today.
It's truly my pleasure, Sarah. Thank you for having me.
All right,
And
thanks.
Nina too.
Bye.
Bye.